everyone, and welcome to another Scots Whay Hae podcast. And today I'm joined by Sarah Rose Greybear and Ruxy Cantir to talk about their show Two in a Barrel, which is touring Scotland. Hello, both.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So first of all, tell us about Two in a Barrel and how it came about.
Yeah, Two in a Barrel is a show for family audiences that is all about two best pals that live inside this barrel on an island of rubbish. And
Right.
every day they sort of sift through the rubbish, finding loads of cool treasures until they start discovering that the rubbish keeps amassing and getting higher and more menacing and threatening them all together. So the piece is very much about questioning what happens with our waste when it's sort of thrown away, out of sight, out of mind, and also what it means to live in really condensed sort of living quarters when you're in such a small space with limited resources, how we survive. So very much exploring ideas of climate change, which is something we're really passionate about as makers, and personally, as well as in the work that we create and do.
And how, I mean, you say it's a family show. How important is that to the show, that it is bringing people along together and across the generations?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of designed from the very get-go when we started working on this piece, which was about 4 years ago now. And it was really important to us to bring this huge topic that we are dealing with in our world to the younger generations who are going to bear the brunt of climate change and our relationship to rubbish and trash and all that stuff. So it was really important for us to bring this to kids and families, for parents and guardians to start maybe this as a to take this show as a opportunity to chat to kids about rubbish and about climate change, but also obviously to bring this huge topic to kids because they're going to be dealing with it when they grow up, and to deal with it and to bring it up in a way that's fun, because we use a lot of clown techniques, physical theater techniques, visual theater, object theater. So it makes it fun and exciting, but as well as obviously dealing with a huge topic.
I mean, that's a difficult balance to strike, isn't it? Between making it fun and attractive, but yet with this really serious message at the heart of it.
Yeah.
How do you approach that?
Well, I mean, as Ruxy was saying, we're clowns. We have a background in physical theater and comedy and visual theater. There's puppetry in this piece that's really magical. Our barrel lights up and there's shadows and there's loads of other things that kind of pop out in the show. So there's constant surprises that are happening, and the characters are so fun. They're just so likable, and you watch these two pals in this situation kind of sorting out how they're dealing with each new challenge they receive. And I think they're super relatable. We have lots of kids from the shows we've done already that just get into fits of giggles. And I think therefore, when we get to some of the bits that are kind of asking those big questions, everyone's on the same page, everyone's on board and kind of fighting for the right fight together, and starting to kind of think about their own ways of relating to Riri and Moku, who are the two characters.
I think it'd be nice to hear a bit more about the characters and their personalities.
Yeah. So I play Moku, and Moku has short hair and round glasses that they've kind of found and kind of made from the rubbish that they've found. And Moku really, I think, really likes competition, and sometimes she gets carried away with it. And Moku really likes finding stuff in the rubbish, and is just kind of a more edgy, just more, I would say, what would you say? Is it more the,
I guess Moku's a little bit more of like the leader of the two, like seems to often have the plan, even if that goes completely awry.
Never goes according to plan.
And then for Riri, Riri is incredibly impulsive, is very, very excited by the things that are there, full of like bubbly energy, very playful, likes to turn everything into a game, really enjoys her having companionship and company with Moku, and really values that friendship, but equally can get very distracted by all the cool stuff that's there, to the point that actually sometimes it puts Moku in sort of dangerous positions, because Riri gets so obsessed with something very quickly and forgets to nurture that friendship sometimes.
And you mentioned that you've had children giggling along with it. And what has been the reaction of audiences?
It's been really lovely so far. This show has been so long in the making because pandemic, we had a pandemic in the middle of it. And so it's been really lovely to finally get to share this with audiences, and especially the audiences that it's designed for. And yeah, kids have been, kids are very vocal and giggle and laugh a lot. And then they also kind of comment and wave. There's a moment where we have an interactive bit with the audiences and the kids, and they're always just really keen to interact and wave at us and say hello. Lots of, as I say, lots of commenting on what's happening. So if there's a shadow puppetry scene, they're going to be like, oh yes, this is what it is.
There was a great moment we had where part of the kind of magic of the show is that all of this stuff happens inside a very tiny space. So it's this massive story, but we are in this tiny barrel together. So things pop out of different places, and hands and feet are coming out from every direction. And we had a kid in the middle of one of our shows. It was so funny, who just was like, what is happening? Are there 27 people in there? It was just, I think we always joke that there's the version of the show that the audience sees, but there's also a whole nother version if you were actually inside the barrel with us, seeing all the things that are happening at any given time. We tend to get stuck in each other's armpits or like sit on each other or get caught on stuff. It's very funny.
And you mentioned that it was 4 years in the making, which, as you say, included lockdown and COVID. Did that affect the piece that you were writing?
Absolutely. Yeah, we had the idea for the show in 2019, and then with support from lovely organizations in Scotland, we were able to kind of try stuff out in very little, very short pieces, and learned a lot from that. And then, of course, we got stuck with the pandemic. And I will say that content-wise, I think it was really interesting how it affected like what we devised and what we created. But practical-wise, well, Sarah Rose and I isolated together in the first few months of the pandemic and the lockdown. So
we were living together in the same flat. And in order to, at the time, we thought it was going to be like 2 weeks, and we would turn that into like a little residency for ourselves to kind of be creative in the time that the world was falling apart. And we were like, what can we make? We don't have much space. You don't need much space to do work in a barrel. So we literally built that show in my living room. In the barrel.
We rehearsed it there, and it worked. Wow. It was good.
We didn't need a huge stage or like loads of room. Everything was so contained.
Now we need a big stage, but like back then we were like, we'll just in between your armchair and your coffee table. That's gonna be great.
Perfect.
With your own rubbish piling up over the week.
That's it.
And you said your background includes clowning. How did you both become involved in that? Because I think it's something, people have their own images of clowns, but I'm guessing it's a very different thing when you do it professionally.
Totally. I think I always like to give this example or this reference because it's known to everybody. Like the type of clown that we do is much more related to like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. So we're looking at the greats from the silent movie era, and it's very much based in movement and physicality, and sometimes has the red nose or a different kind of nose, sometimes doesn't. In this particular case, we don't use different noses, and it's very much based in kind of character, physicality, movement, and just those kind of techniques that in terms of rhythm and pacing that we're taking from. And importantly, relationship to audience. So when you come to our show, there's no fourth wall there. We're very much engaged with you. We're very much making eye contact with you. And not to the point where we're like not like that, but I suppose you're just in on it. You're there's no wall, and you're kind of in there with us, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and does that encourage almost audience interact? You were saying our kids are commenting, things like that. I guess they're not probably aware of what you would call the way that theatre perhaps works for adults, but it encourages that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. We see them and they see us. And so as a result, the relationship between the performers, the clowns, and the audience is one that is immediately solidified as that being part of how we tell this story and how the show works. So as a result, it's when we hear laughter, we can acknowledge that. When we're doing something that's playful and a kid starts doing it too, we can also acknowledge that. So it becomes something where the rules of the space change a bit.
Yeah.
There's a real collaborative element to experiencing a show that has clowning elements to it. And in this case, clown characters using that methodology and that style. And that has come through years of study through our university training, workshops, master classes, specialized programs that we've done all around the world. And we also teach too. So we facilitate workshops, teaching others how to do this kind of work.
So is it a kind of strand of theatre studies or something like that, clowning? And you choose that that's something that you're going to do?
Yeah, people often put clown in under the physical theater umbrella, or the total theater umbrella, as it's also called. So it's right there along with kind of mask theater, commedia dell'arte or mime, movement theater, object theater, which includes puppetry and other types. So it's all under the umbrella of physical theater, I think sometimes people refer to it. And it's there's lots of traditions, European and non-European, that kind of have influenced that over the years. And of course, you'll hear everybody in our industry and will have a different definition of clown, of course. And of course, some people might remember, lots of makeup, big shoes, or
the kind of party clown. I think people often think the birthday clown, don't they? Like white face with the big shoes and the bright, colorful.
And those are valid as well for whoever does that. I suppose we there's just many different strands of it, and the way we define it is kind of what you will see in our show, and it's quite reactive and bubbly and present, and curious, vulnerable as well. I think the main thing for both of us in terms of clown is that openness and vulnerability of what Sarah Rose described with the audience specifically.
And you bring all of these things into the show. There is puppetry and there is different aspects, as you said there.
Yeah,
we should probably let people know how they can get tickets and where you're playing and all of those kind of things.
Absolutely. So our producers are called Scissor Kick, and they're wonderful. And if you go on their website, you'll find information about how to get tickets. But
yeah, we've just done the Edinburgh Science Festival, which was a blast. But next, we're going to be up this week in Bathgate at the Reconnect Regal Theatre. And then we'll be in Oban at the Rockfield Centre. Then we're heading over to Mull. So we'll be in Tobermory with the Mull Theatre. We'll be in Lochgilphead at Craignish Village Hall. We're going to Quarryman Arts Centre in Newton Stewart, Cromarty, Eden Court will be in Inverness. We're going to Dunbeath Heritage Museum, which is a new one for us. We've not been there. We've toured with some of our other shows to some of these places. Then we're going to Ray Village Hall all the way up in Thurso. So we're heading far north. And then to Gable End Theatre in Hoy. So we've got Orkney, the Picacoy Centre in Kirkwall, and then Shetland Arts in Shetland. So we are thrilled because we've never gotten to go to Orkney and Shetland with our tours before. So this is our first time to really get far out to places that don't always get the touring shows coming through, because it is a great adventure for us.
It sounds like an amazing tour. It almost sounds like a kind of grand tour of Scotland that people could go on to the most beautiful parks and places. Absolutely. And I think it's something which is happening more. I mean, you say you've toured some of these places before, but I've noticed like National Theatre of Scotland, Scottish Opera, and other often bigger companies are now doing that. They're taking their shows to places that perhaps hadn't had them before. Is that something that's important to you, to kind of really reach out past the central belt, which is often,
absolutely. It's very important to us that theater, and this type of theater specifically, is accessible to folk. And we're very aware that some places in Scotland don't always get as many theater shows, and lots of artists are based in the central belt. So we always make an effort for our work to kind of go into those places. And specifically for this show that deals with rubbish and climate change, it's important for us that the show reaches coastal communities where this type of stuff is actually quite present in their day-to-day life. We're really excited to go to some of these places.
Yeah, and meet new people. It's one of our favorite things about touring is like, we love showing up to a village hall and like having dinner together, like getting to hang out afterwards and learn about what's cool in the area. So we love getting to actually not just come and do the show, but experience what it means to be in those communities and to continue the conversations that are sparked by the piece we've made.
We also have engagement activities after the show, or kind of like wraparound activities like workshops and stuff. So we're really keen to kind of deepen our relationship to the places that we visit. So we won't just kind of go in, do a show and then leave. Oftentimes we'll go in and there might be a couple of workshops we lead with some of the kids or some of the people who have seen the show or not seen the show. And yeah, we're just really keen to kind of meet people and share our work and just kind of, yeah, just stay there a while.
What kind of workshops are you doing? That's interesting.
Yeah, our workshops are very much centered around theater for social change. How are we change makers through the art that we make? And so in relationship to the show that we're doing, the workshops we have are very much geared around how we're viewing the rubbish we create, and how we can be more conscious of our decision making. So we do that again in playful ways of exploring how we actually went about creating this show, ways that you can create characters and develop these ideas, as well as starting to be really crafty and creative with the things that are just around us and finding the potential in everyday objects.
And it strikes me that by doing that kind of thing, and you're in communities, people will start to meet like-minded people through doing these things, and then they may go off and kind of do their own thing. It's really, yeah. And
art.
Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, arts, it's such a great way to gather and to build community. And that's something that we certainly are really passionate about as theater makers, is that we're creating opportunity for people to come together. And I think especially out of the pandemic, where that's been missing, it's been a real privilege to get to be instigating that in spaces.
Oh, absolutely. You know, going back out to theatre and going out to music gigs and things like that, you can just feel people are just so ready to be entertained, but also, you know, all other things that art can do for them. It's been a great thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Opportunity to think and reflect on things that are happening to us and have fun with each other as well. Because yeah, I making people laugh and hearing the laughter and just laughing in the community is kind of my favorite thing.
Yeah, and to get to do it with like one of your best pals. And we also have an amazing production stage manager, Zoe Williams, who is going to be on tour with us as well. So we just get to load up in a van and off we go to do stuff we really care about.
Well, I was going to ask about the kind of collaborative aspect. How did it go from your initial idea to then the stage show? I mean, what's the process involved?
It's a very long process. So it started with just an idea that we had together, and we were like, okay, cool. We just kind of imagined these two best pals stuck in a barrel on a rubbish heap, and we kind of describe it sometimes as like Beckett meets Pixar, because it's kind of like a cartoon, but it's sort of existential as like Beckettian. So we kind of had that idea in 2019, and then, like as I mentioned, we were lucky enough to get some support from some organizations, artist organizations in Scotland, like Surge, based in Glasgow, Edinburgh Science Fest, which we just visited in the weekend, Imaginate, who gave us the opportunity to just like test 10 minutes of material, very rough material. And then, of course, as clowns, we learn from that, and we learn as writers, as devisers of the piece, we learn what works, what doesn't, what we need to tweak, and then it just kind of kept growing from there.
And now it's been a privilege to have a whole team on board, which is so exciting when you get to that place where, as lead artists on a project, you start with the idea, but then you get to bring in all these other geniuses. So we have an amazing director with Tim Licata. We've got Melanie Jordan, who's been our dramaturg, asking really good questions about the shape of our piece. We've got Fergus Dunnett, our designer, who has masterfully created this insane sort of Mary Poppins bag of a barrel. We've got Susan Bear, who was our sound designer. Who else am I? Oh, Laura Hawkins, our lighting designer. Adding lights has been magical.
Yeah. And our producers again, Scissor Cake, who have been absolutely wonderful. And all of this wouldn't have been possible without the support of Creative Scotland, who have through their program, the Touring Fund, are allowing us to tour everywhere along with other shows from the community.
It's funny you mentioned Beckett, because when I read the synopsis, I thought Waiting for Godot.
Yeah.
Big.
That's it. It was a real trick, this one, where we're like, it is existential and Beckettian, but it is for young audiences, so we can't just like leave it, you know what I mean? It's not in terms of how we resolve the story and how we get the characters to deal with their surroundings. I feel like that was a really interesting challenge to kind of make a Beckett play for kids, essentially.
Yeah, and to not give all the answers, to be able to present some really interesting thoughts that hopefully will allow those conversations to continue, but for it to still feel like we've gone on a big journey. And it does feel like there's a sense of, end in the piece, but there's still very much bigger questions at hand.
Yeah,
that I think are quite satisfying.
That's right. It was important for us to not, for it not to be like a don't litter message campaign, you know what I mean? Because obviously that's important and valid, and we all know that, and the young generations should kind of grow up with that as well. But there's more to it, in the climate crisis and the rubbish crisis. I feel like, and kind of asking those questions, it's just more layered and more complex than that.
And you've spoken about how kids have reacted to it. How have the older members of the audience reacted? What kind of feedback have you had?
Yeah, it's been great. I think what's so lovely about making shows, because we don't only make stuff for young audiences, so getting to make a show that is for families, I think it often gives adult audiences permission to view things like a child again. And to play. So the number of times, where we have sort of these interactive bits in the audience where we're, picking up on stuff that the kids are saying, or, if they're, doing some sort of action, the parents often get quite into it too. And it's joyous. And I think we've been really delighted by how much parents also really want to be taking their kids to see shows that are going to be meaningful for them as a shared experience. And so that is very much what the show does. And it's been great to see adult audiences having just as much fun, but also asking big questions of themselves as well.
And of, have discussions with their kids after they leave the show, to kind of be like, well, what was that about? And why were they like that? What happened? Kind of, initiating some of those early conversations that would be so useful, and as they grow up in this new world that we're creating for them.
And it might be nice to talk a bit more about the inspirations behind the show. What was it that made you think, this is what we want to concentrate on? What was that?
Yeah, personally, I mean, both Ruxy and myself have always, I think, been quite invested in sort of eco-consciousness and how we care for our planet. We're a piece in a much bigger puzzle, and the behaviors we practice and the way we navigate the world are very much things that influence the way our world runs. And so from a personal perspective, it felt like a really exciting opportunity to use our passions as theater makers and as physical theater performers to find creative ways to engage in a conversation that we really care about. I think we're at a time in the world where it is so present. We are seeing the effects of what has been happening for years in terms of our carbon emissions, the waste we create, the way capitalism has fed into our world and left its thumbprints on everything. It's an opportunity for us to really look at how we're making a difference and using the forms that we have at our disposal, which is being able to tell stories and getting people to activate their imaginations and actually imagine how they're part of that change. Has been essential to why we felt that this is the story we want to tell, and the story we want to tell now, because we have a chance to change things.
And even like, when we were kind of thinking about it or circulating the idea between the two of us, I mean, it's so present, this rubbish problem, that I remember we were talking a lot about like the rubbish island in the Pacific Ocean, which is as big as France, or, stuff like that. You get very specific examples of that kind of make your heart sink when you start looking or thinking about them. And for me, that becomes a big symbol and a large metaphor for like what Sarah Rose mentioned in terms of consumerism or kind of people not working together but separately and kind of selfishly. So that became a bit of the root of this entire show, of kind of like what a great metaphor and what a great image to start from, and to kind of encourage people to be aware of that and be active about it, and not work against each other but with each other, and kind of be aware of that consumerist thing that we have to fight against most of the time.
And in terms of that aspect of the show, have you had reactions like people saying, I didn't realize it was that bad, or do people do realize, but this is just maybe a way of making it more clear to them that the situation is what the situation is?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the fascinating things about this topic is that, you know, we live in a westernized world, in a developed country where we have systems in place that take our rubbish away, but we don't live in the countries where we're surrounded by it all the time. So
Yeah.
what we're presenting on stage in some ways is sort of a form of dystopian fiction that is very much reflecting a reality that is quite dark. What happens when we get to a place where we're literally living on top of rubbish heaps, and the way that we get anything that we need is sifting through what washes up and what floats around in the wind and what lands on our doorstep, because it's dangerous out there. We've lost the natural elements of the world. And it is, when we talk about how Beckettian stuff can be, it's quite dark when you think about it that way. This could actually be our world. And in some parts of the world, that is their world. This is not something that's completely imaginative. So in terms of that response of audiences going, I didn't realize it was like that, I think some people do realize it could be like that, but it's easy for us to turn our cheek because we don't have to see it every day. We can think we did a good job when we picked up our rubbish and put it in the bin, but actually it goes somewhere.
I mean, you saw how upset people were during lockdown when the bins weren't picked up for a few weeks. And, you know, that was, so, you know, to take that to its extreme, you're absolutely right. We're only maybe a few months away from that being the case.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. It's we're living in a fragile system. You know, anything could, you know, happen, and then within a week or so, it's a completely different world we're looking at. So, we're at the beginning of the tour, so we can't wait to hear people's impressions and realizations, and whatever they're left with after the show. We just kind of can't wait to hear more. You know, the other day we got some fan art from from a kid who came to the show and drew some stuff for the characters, and it was lovely because for us that's really important, because it means that it stayed with them, and they're going to go back and talk to their parent or their guardians about it, and or to their friends, and they'll be, oh, we saw this thing. And so again, it's like that conversation that happens afterwards from the people who've seen it is really important to us.
And I wondered who or what got you interested in theatre in the first place? What kind of lit that spark?
Oh my gosh. I grew up in a very boisterous family where if you were going to get the attention, you had to have the funniest joke or to be quite present. So I think there was always, I certainly always had a desire to tell stories and to use my imagination. But it was definitely, I was so lucky in high school to have an amazing drama teacher, Mr. T. Adams, who still to this day, I feel so grateful for, an educator who had such a passion for activating the imaginations of young people and doing it in a way that gave us such a sense of ownership and drive. And then from there, knowing that with that support, that it could be a possibility for a career. I was lucky enough to go to Northwestern University in Chicago, which has an amazing theater department with some great mentorship from professors like Reeves Collins, who are just master storytellers, and some really brilliant academics who helped me on that journey to do this. What about you?
Well, my family's mostly journalists and political scientists, so I'm kind of like the silly one who's just bopping around between academia, academic talk. But I suppose what the first kind of I grew up in Moldova, which is in Eastern Europe, so we didn't have lots of kind of access to theater as young kids, or certainly as courses or training goes. But I remember when I was an exchange student for 1 year of high school in the US, where I spent some time, I remember being exposed to some musicals or some stuff like that, and just being quite fascinated with it. And then yeah, I think I just kind of, with the help of drama teachers from school and then from university, well, I went to university at Furman in South Carolina. Of course, the theater department there was very dedicated and committed. So, and we got a pretty, what they call a liberal arts education there, which means it's quite, on the whole, you get a lot from every department, lighting, stagecraft, everything.
Right.
So I think that's where that was nourished. And then realizing that I'm just quite silly, and I don't really fit into the quote as much in the conventional Shakespearean world, perhaps. And then seeing that there's a whole world in front of me in terms of physical theater and clown, and that's where I explored that type of theater at Del Arte in California. So it was kind of, for me, I think it was a step-by-step process, but constantly holding that like a secret, being like, I think this is where it's at.
And once Two in a Barrel is over, are you able to think about what you're going to do next, or is it just all concentrating on this tour at the moment?
Oof, that is so funny, because we have this conversation all the time. Ruxy and I, we're lucky enough to have a few shows that we do together, but also work that we do separately. And as freelance artists who are constantly making things, I often sort of view it as puzzle piecing, where you're sort of running one thing while you're working on something else at the same time, so that when that thing ends, the next thing begins. So it feels like there's a lot of moving pieces. We have another show called Unicorn Dance Party that is going to be on the festival circuit this summer. So we've got summer shows that are already booked in. I'm in development for another clown show called Charlene and Machines. You've got Pickled Republic.
Yeah, there's another show that will tour in the autumn called Pickled Republic, and that's also clown based, but for adults this time. So yeah, lots of things on the go. I think for now though, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm just kind of taking it day by day, because there's quite a lot going on, especially at the beginning of the tour.
Sure.
We're like, oh, this prop piece needs some fixing. Cool. We didn't, because we don't realize when you're in development what you'll need and how it will be on the van and how it's loaded, all that kind of stuff. So boring stuff, not the fun stuff.
But that's interesting. So does the show change? Will the show at the end of the tour be different from the one that you begin with?
Probably a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the exciting parts about making new work, is that we've been building this piece, but the missing link is always the audience. And the discoveries that happen when you put it in front of people are so useful. And because as new work, we've created this, we have the ability to then look at ways that will lean into certain moments or kind of finesse bits that will find the rhythm of that joke or that humor. I don't think it won't change in terms of, you won't get a totally different story, but I think we'll just definitely find our rhythm in that, in a way that is so lovely when you get to do a full run of a show and not just a one-off or just a couple shows here or there. A tour really gives you that gift of settling into it.
Yeah, little things that we'll tweak here and there, again, based on the audience, because the audience is the one who's going to tell us what works and what doesn't. And then because we're also the creators and the performers of the show, we're able to then be like, listen, that moment, let's look at it for the next show. Let's change it. Let's do it like this, or faster or slower, or whatever it is, so that we can really make it land the way we want it to. So yeah, I'm actually quite excited to see at the end of the tour how long the show will be, how certain aspects of it that right now feel newer, how they'll fare. So it'll be quite exciting to see.
Well, all the very best with the tour. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you both.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. So nice to chat to you about it all.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And we'll be back soon with someone completely different.